Greetings to you all. My name is Esetu Tabela. I'm with my group members Mihlali, Fanele, Gabi, Nelisiwe, Londeka, Nomandla, and Baneli. We're going to do a presentation on the topic work-related violence and exploitation.
Hello everyone, my name is Gabsilem Tembo and I'll be defining some most important terms on the topic, and I'll also be giving some background information on the topic. So I'll start off by explaining violence. So violence is defined as the incident where persons are abused, threatened or assaulted in circumstances related to their work, including commuting to and from work, involving explicit or implicit challenges to their safety, well-being or healthy. I'll also be defining exploitation, which is defined as the process, condition, or result of an individual, group, or institution taking unfair advantages, which are through deceptions or an undue influence for their own ends. The Encyclopedia of World Problem and Human Potential of 2015 stated that the most extreme form of exploitation is employment slavery. Most groups which are exploited in employment are underprivileged groups such as indigenous population, women, children, immigrants, the illiterate, the lower level of national society, the aged, and the disabled. Such groups may not have the knowledge or other means to combat exploitation and may sink into the state of apathy and resignation. Furthermore, discrimination and segregation are two tools which exploitation may thrive. Existing trade unions may ban minority groups from becoming members, thus leaving them defenseless against unscrupulous employers. Where legislation exists against unjust employment conditions and rates of pay, it may be inadequate or inadequately enforced. Thank you for watching.
Greetings to you all. I'm Fanele Makoba, presenting one of the types of violences, which is a physical violence. A physical violence, it is the use of physical force against another person or group that could result in physical, psychological, and even sexual harm. Physical violence include various examples, of which could be pinching, beating, kicking, slapping, and even pushing. There are various victims that are affected by physical violence in the workplace, of which results to shooting, stabbing, and beating. Those are the police force, those are the employees that work night shifts, of which are the securities, the waiters, the waitresses, as well as chefs. We could also count the teachers, the bank tellers, the shop vendors that are located in those areas with high crime, as well as the staff in healthcare or social service. There are three causes of physical violence. The first one is the cause linked to the organization, whereby there is the absence of social support from the supervisors and the
employers are bear as a result of a sexual violence. The damaging effects of harassment do not just affect the employer, the employees who are the victims, but they also affect those who have observed it, who has absorbed it or suffers from mental and physical harm, and employee morale can decrease. Here's how to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace. If one have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace, he or she may talk to someone that he can trust, or even lodge a complaint against a perpetrator. The organization needs to have sexual harassment policies to try to eliminate sexual harassment within the workplace. The organization may even launch a campaign which is against sexual harassment within the organization, and even the organization can even offers consultation or counseling to those employees who have suffered from sexual harassment or rape.
My name is Banele Yalezo, and I'll be dwelling on another type of work-related violence, which is the psychological violence. Psychological violence can be defined as an intentional use of power, including threats of physical force against another person or group that can result in harm of physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development. Psychological violence include verbal abuse, bullying, mobbing, harassment, and threats. Psychological violence is often associated with emotional abuse, and it constitutes unwelcome, repeated behavior that has serious negative psychological consequences for the victim. This is often the case with verbal bullying and mobbing. Due to difficulty of setting boundaries that work across different personalities and cultural norms, definitions are often vague and not measurable. Thus, the statistics on psychological work-related violence are not well developed. Victims are often ashamed and not aware or too scared to report action classified as physical violence. Harassment can be defined as any behavior that demeans, humiliates, embarrasses, disturbs, insult, or discomfort an individual in whatever manner by word, gesture, swearing, or insult. Threats can be defined as an encompasses the means of death or announcement of intention to harm a person or to damage their property. Verbal abuse includes screaming, shouting, putting down, naming, ridiculing the victim for their religion, beliefs, ethics, church, etc. Bullying, on the other hand, is a repeated offense behavior through cruel, malicious humiliation attempts to undermine an individual or a group of workers. Thank you.
Greetings to all. This is Mihlali Tabata, and I'll be doing a presentation on the consequences of work-related exploitation and violence. The work-related exploitation and violence have different consequences. Firstly, it may concern the organization as whole, and secondly, it may concern the individual alone. On the organizational part, the organization may have a high decline of staff health and an increased absenteeism. There will be a low work unit cohesiveness and increased cost for sick time and health care plans. And there will be a high staff turnover. Individually, the person will have avoidance symptoms. That particular person will be avoiding situations and activities linked to the event. Intrusions like painful memories concerning traumatic event. That person may experience nightmares and flashbacks. And that The individual will also experience the hyperactivation, like the sleeping problems, and the loss of interest in activities done beforehand. Thank you.
Greetings everyone, my name is Nelson Sokele. I'm here to present to you the prevention of violence in the workplace. So the organization, what they can do is to complete a background check on the new employees that is going to be employed by that particular organization. They can also create a policy that prevents harassments, making sure that they also establish the strict anti-violence policy in that organization. They can also create an effective line of communication that will encourage employees to report any or all violent incidents that are taking place in that organization, and be able to identify the organizational risk factors that can also lead to the violence in the organization. And the key factors they can look into is training and awareness. Those are the key factors that can also help on employees to understand the violence, and because it may happen that they don't understand if someone is violating their rights in the workplace. Also encourage employees to accept individual differences. And another thing, they can also prevent a conflict in turning into an harassment or violence. In doing so, they will be able to negotiate or talk to each other. If there is a problem, they can arise to a violence, or that can lead in someone in seeking revenge in the workplace. And also the organization can manage visitors, provide security monitoring in the organization, so they will be knowing that who just enter the building and who's out, who's not, and whatnot. So they also deter the robbers with limited assets of hands. So meaning that the place will be secured in many levels, as they have introduced the security monitoring in the organization. After an incident or a near miss of the incident, the company needs to perform a data analysis, so that will help the organization to know where they have missed as an organization and as an employer, if they need to start afresh to look at what was the cause. So knowing that, the organization will be able to prevent violence in the workplace. With that being said, thank you very much. Now I will hand over to my colleague.
With that being said, it is very important for organizations to implement effective strategies and measures to eradicate the issue of violence and exploitation in the workplace. Implementing effective strategies can be beneficial to the organization in many ways. Most importantly, it does not only protect the employees, but it also protects the organization as a whole, in such a way that employees will not work in fear, which will cause them to work more productively, and then in turn ensure that the organization is productive and works effectively. What organizations must know is that they can never be immune to exploitation and violence in the workplace, but they must ensure that they enforce the right strategies in order to overcome the issue. And what organizations also must know is that a safe and secure work environment is a productive work environment. Now that's all from our group. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Now it's your turn for some questions and maybe some feedback. Thank you.
Greetings everyone, my name is Nomadla Lovela, and I'll be talking about sexual violence as a type of violence and is more dominant in the workplace, and the victims tend to be women, females, and people from outside the country. Sexual violence can be defined as any sexual act, attempts to obtain a sexual act, or an unwanted sexual comment or advance against a person's sexuality using coercion by any person, regardless of their relationship to the victim in any setting, including but not limited to home and work. Many women are facing a challenge of sexual harassment and rape, where they are sexually discriminated by either their employers or co-workers. This may include that they are told that if they want to keep their job, they need to sexually satisfy their employees. In this case, this is called a quid pro quo harassment, where it is the toleration of harassment to obtain job-related benefits to or avoid job-related damages. Here, an employee can be offered a promotion in exchange for sexual favors, or be threatened to be dismissed in the absence of such sexual favor. A hostile work environment occurs when an employee is subjected to an unwelcome physical or verbal conduct of sexual nature that is so severe that it changes the employee's working conditions or creates an abusive environment. Absenteeism interrupts job performance, and the loss of experienced workers are only some of the costs that employers bear as a result of a sexual violence. The damaging effects of harassment do not just affect the employees who are the victims, but they also affect those who have observed it, who has absorbed it, or suffers from mental and physical